Hello everyone, welcome to Shantha Lakshmi IAS. Everybody is witnessing, right, how the world has been suffering since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. But due to the scientific advancements which promoted rapid vaccination around the globe, gave the world some sign of relief. From then, the globe is trying to be resilient in all aspects. But then, another shock has come in the form of Russia-Ukraine war, which is leading to global economic crisis, global food insecurity, etc. And in this context, the efforts made by the United Nations and Turkey's president in signing the grain deal between the Russia and Ukraine will become a beacon of hope for the world. So in this video, let us discuss about this Russia-Ukraine exports grain deal very comprehensively. So to begin with, and what's the story so far till now? On February 24, the Russia has invaded the Ukraine, right? From then, this was the first major deal between Russia and Ukraine. And in this deal, the Russia and Ukraine have agreed to resume grain exports from the Black Sea ports as part of a deal negotiated by the United Nations and Turkey. And the agreement was signed separately by Russia and Ukraine with Turkey and the United Nations. And this agreement is expected to ease a looming global food crisis. And before we deal with the what is the deal and what are the terms and conditions of this agreement, first we'll understand how the Russia-Ukraine war impacted the grain exports and how it led to the global food crisis. Before the war, Ukraine had the capacity to export up to 6 million tons of food items a month, mainly through its Black Sea ports. But since the Russia have captured some Ukraine ports, that is including Mariupol and Berdyansk, and also the Odisha, more than 20 million tons of grain are stuck in the warehouses of Ukraine and containers, and they're not able to export those items. And a new harvesting season began in June, and the output is expected to be 60 million tons, which is a huge chunk of which are meant to be for exports. And Ukraine would run out of warehousing capacity unless it immediately starts exports. So this is the Ukraine perspective. What the Ukraine says, because of the Russian blockade of this Mariupol, Berdyansk and Odisha, they were not able to export their food grains, which caused a food crisis in not only in Ukraine, but also around the globe. So this is the perspective of Ukraine. And what the Russia's perspective? The Russia has rejected this criticism that its actions have caused the food crisis. What Russia has said that Ukraine has heavily mined the waters around Odisha and Mykolaiv port. So that's why they have stopped the vessels. Means Russia have blockaded the naval ports of Ukraine. And Russia also blamed Western sanctions for a fall in its exports, which also contributed to the food crisis. So what the Russia says? Russia claims that the Ukraine has carried weapons in their ships through the Black Sea ports. So that's why they have blockaded those ports. And it also blamed the Western sanctions on Russia for a fall in Russia's exports, which has contributed to the food crisis. So this is the perspective of Russia regarding the food crisis. And what the Western countries have said, while the West says Russian food and fertilizer products were exempted from the sanctions, the financial sanctions have complicated payments. And this is the perspective of West. And what the West said, there has been exemptions from the Russian food and fertilizer products. But due to these financial sanctions, which have complicated payments, which in turn led to the food crisis. So these are the three perspectives of how the Russia-Ukraine war impacted grain exports and led to the global food crisis. Moving forward, and why is this agreement important? What is the significance of this agreement? Russia and Ukraine together accounted for more than a quarter of the world's wheat supplies. And Russia's share in the global exports of wheat is some 20% according to 2020 figures. And while the Ukraine share is account for 8%. And about 50 countries depend on Russia and Ukraine for more than 30% of their wheat import. See the number here, about 50 countries depend on these countries only for more than 30% of their wheat imports. And besides wheat, Ukraine is the world's 8th largest producer and 4th largest exporter of corn, accounting for 16% of the global exports. And Ukraine also produces 46% of sunflower seed and sunflower oil. And this sunflower oil is and Ukraine is the world's largest exporter of this sunflower oil. So definitely Ukraine war has therefore clearly hit one of the bread baskets of the world. And this heaped additional pressure on global food prices, which were already under strain due to climate shocks and COVID-19 pandemic. And what the UN's food price index has said that the UN food price index averaged at 154.2 points in June, which is 23% higher than its value a year ago. And food price inflation has soared across economies in recent weeks. So this agreement, if implemented, will see this Russian and Ukrainian grains flowing back into the market, that is easing prices, which will in turn lead to the global food crisis. So what are the important points in this? Why this agreement is significant? Russia's share is 20% of wheat and Ukraine accounts for 8%. And around 50 countries depend on Russia and Ukraine for more than 30% of their wheat imports. Ukraine is the world's largest 8th producer and 4th largest exporter of corn. And it also the world's largest exporter of sunflower oil. And UN's food price index said it has been higher since the last year, 23% higher. And food price inflation has soared. So this agreement is important, which will ease the food crisis in the world. Moving forward, and why was the movement of grains halted till now? Moscow accused Ukraine of failing to remove sea mines at the ports to allow safe shipping and insisted on its right to check incoming ships for weapons. We have discussed, right? Russia has accused the Ukraine for mining its seaports by carrying heavy weapons in its ships. And Ukraine has argued that Russia's port blockade and launching of missiles from the Black Sea made any shipments unviable. And Ukrainian authorities have also accused Russia of stealing grain from eastern Ukraine and deliberately shelling Ukrainian fields to set them on fire. So that's why the movement of grains has been halted till now. Now, what is this agreement is all about? What is the grain export deal between Russia and Ukraine? The deal makes provisions for the safe passage of ships. And it also poses the establishment of a control center in Istanbul, that is in Turkey, which is to be staffed by the United Nations, Turkish, Russian and Ukrainian officials to run and coordinate the process. And the ships will undergo inspections to ensure they are not carrying any weapons. And in this agreement, Ukraine insisted that no Russian ship would escort vessels and that there would be no Russian representative present at the Ukrainian ports. So what is this export grain deal is all about? The deal makes provisions for the safe passage of ships, that too through the establishment of joint control center in Istanbul, which is to be staffed by the United Nations officials, Turkish officials, Russian officials and Ukrainian officials. And those ships would undergo inspections in order to ensure that they're not carrying any weapon. So this is the agreement, this is the deal between Russia and Ukraine. And what is the objective of this export grain deal? This deal aims to help avert famine by injecting more wheat, sunflower oil, fertilizer, and other products into the world markets, including for humanitarian needs. The target is the pre-level of 5 million metric tons of grain exported each month. So what are the objectives? To avert famine by injecting more wheat, sunflower oil, fertilizer, and other products. Moving forward. Now, what are the terms and conditions of the deal? Let's see some of them. The agreement has sought to address the concerns of both the countries while resuming grain export. According to the deal, a joint coordination center will be set up in Istanbul. We have discussed this, right? Comprising officials and military personnel from Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, along with UN representatives. And these officials will check the vessels going to Ukraine's port to make sure that they don't carry any weapons. And see the point here, this is important. The agreement doesn't call on Ukraine to demine its southern waters. The agreement does not call on Ukraine to demine its southern waters. Means the southern waters of Ukraine can have weapons or missiles at their ports. But some ports will, but this agreement will ensure that some ports will ensure those ships would not carry weapons, and those ships will be inspected by a joint coordination center which will be set up in Istanbul. But specific routes from Odessa and other Ukrainian ports would be earmarked for the ships with a grain to sail to Turkey's Bosphorus. And if necessary, a minesweeper can be brought in to clear the routes to the ports. So these are the terms and conditions of this deal. What are the terms? Joint Coordination Center will be set up in Istanbul, comprising of officials from Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and the UN representatives. And this agreement does not call on Ukraine to demine its southern waters. And if necessary, a minesweeper will also be brought in to clear the routes to the ports. And in this context, Black Sea, the mapping of Black Sea is important. So what are the countries that are bordering the Black Sea? Russia here, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Georgia. And here see, here Istanbul, here the joint coordination center will be set up, and from here they will inspect the ships going through this ports and coming from the ports, that those ships don't carry any weapons and they carry only grains for the export purposes. And regarding this Black Sea, in our mapping charts, we have made a video. Please look after that so that you can understand or learn what are the nations that are surrounding the Black Sea in the order wise, which will help you for competitive examinations. And moving forward, and which ports are included in these agreements? There are 3 ports which would open the way to commercial food exports from the Ukrainian ports. What are those 3 ports? Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Yuzhny. From these 3 ports, they are open for grain exports, and from these 3 ports only grain ships are exported. Sia, Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Yuzhny. So these are the southern ports of this Ukraine. So with this, we'll end this session here. If you like, please like and share. Thank you.